Hello, and thank you for tuning in to my latest video. If you're new, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. My name is Gordon Causey, as always, sometimes known as Gordy Canuck. And tonight, or I'm recording this at night, so I'll say tonight. Tonight, I'm going to be talking um, about the protests that have been taking place. A lot of protests took place in my native Canada over this past weekend because it's roughly the 77th anniversary of either the glorious War of Independence that created the nation state of Israel, or conversely, the Nakba, which is most often translated into English as the catastrophe. And this is a very long, convoluted, and complicated history that I'm going to be going through. And so I ask you to bear with me. I'm going to be reading from my notes that I have published, as I often do, to my Facebook page. Again, the name on my Facebook profile is Gordy Canuck. I will include a link in the comments. But without further ado, let me get on to what I wrote. Uh, Catastrophe or Glorious War of Independence. 77 years ago, the modern nation state of Israel was born. Well, kind of. Israel declared itself an independent nation state on May 14th, 1948. That was one day ahead, one day before Great Britain formally vacated the land they had been ruling since basically the closing days of World War I. So Jewish Israelis celebrate May 14th as their day of independence in much the same way that Americans celebrate July 4th or the 4th of July as their Independence Day. Israel did not truly gain its independence until March of 1949 after going to war with the armies of five Arab League nations, just like the United States really did not gain its independence until September of 1783 after an 8 year long battle with British forces. History, it has long been said by people far smarter than me. It's long been said that history is written by the winners, by the victors. And history is skewed, it is said, slanted and distorted to paint the victors as glorious and full of virtue, and the defeated, the vanquished, they're typically depicted as having been evil and deplorable. And that's the way it's been for a very, very long time, perhaps throughout all of recorded human history. But in our postmodern world, the script has been flipped. Now it is the vanquished, the defeated, who are idolized, while the victors are demonized. We see it here in North America. History has been rewritten, and what it's done is it's been rewritten to depict the First Nations peoples on this continent, North America, as saints. There's a myth that's believed by many that the First Nations peoples were all living in peace and harmony prior to European colonization. Those who believe this narrative say there were no wars, no crime, no slavery, no famine, no disease. All these horrible things were brought over to the New World by evil colonizers. The simple fact is that the truth, as is often the case in human affairs, so often it lies somewhere between two mythological extremes. Getting back to the Middle East and the land alternately known, it's either known as Israel or Palestine, depending upon which extreme caters to your bias. We have two narratives. On the one hand, glorious Jewish Palestinians fought off the invading armies of five Arab League nations to establish a Jewish nation state in their ancestral homeland. That is how supporters of Israel and Israelis will frame it. On the other hand, it is said that European Jews with little to no connection to the land brutalized a local population and stole the land from them. So you have these two competing narratives. Jews call it their war of independence. And for those who call themselves Palestinians and their supporters, it's called the Nakba. And that's an Arabic word which is most often translated into English as catastrophe. And because we are deep into this modern age, this postmodern era, the Nakba narrative, like the North American First Nations narrative, it holds a lot of sway in the public marketplace of ideas. And so the question is, what is the truth? First things first, seeing as I touched on pre colonial North American history, let me deal with that issue before moving on to Israel Palestine. And I'm sorry to burst bubbles, but prior to European colonization, this continent, the first peoples living here, they suffered from all the failings of the human condition. There was war, famine, disease, slavery, crime. Now, I'm not saying that Europeans were not guilty of atrocities, they were. When it comes to humanity, it strikes me that the only thing that separates a person from being good or evil, at least a lot of the time, is simply their capacity to do evil. The Europeans came in and did to First Nations people what those same First Nations peoples have been doing to each other before Europeans arrived, but at a less technologically advanced level. But let's get back to the competing narratives of glorious fighters for Israeli independence versus the catastrophe of a native population having its land stolen. I think it helps to examine the history of who has ruled this land. And I'm going to go way back. For most of this region's history, the land has been ruled by one colonial power or another. From the end of World War I until May 15th, 1948, the foreign colonial power ruling the land was the British. Prior to the British, it was the Ottoman Turks. And it goes without saying that neither the Turks nor the British had ancestral roots in this land. And right there, that covers the last 400 years roughly. And we're going back about 400 years now. But we can go back even further. The Ottomans, they got control of the area from the Mamluks or the Mamluk Empire. They were Egyptians. And the Mamluks took over after the European Christian Crusaders basically collapsed. And prior to the Egyptian Mamluks, the region was ruled by various caliphates from the Arabian Peninsula. And the Arabians had taken over from the Eastern Roman, or if you like, a Byzantine Empire. And before the Byzantines, it was the Romans. And now we come to a brief period where the people of the region ruled themselves. The Jewish people of what would become known as Roman occupied Judea revolted against what was at the time their Greek or Seleucid occupiers. And there's so much history here. The Greek Empire, basically Alexander's old empire, Alexander the Great, his empire split into four. And one of the four were the Seleucids. So these Greek Seleucid occupiers were had their occupation interrupted, or there was a revolt. It was called the Maccabean Revolt, the Maccabees, and that was around 170 or so years before Christ. Before Christ. And this period of self rule, where the people living in the land were ruling themselves, that only lasted 90 to 100 years. And then moving forward, that's, after this brief period, 100 or so years of the Jews ruling themselves. After that, the Romans came in. But I want to go back, moving in the opposite direction. I want to go backward in time. I want to go in reverse. So before the 100 or so years of self rule, again, it was the Greek Seleucid Empire that ruled. And before the Seleucid, it was, as I mentioned, the Greeks under Alexander the Great. And prior to Alexander the Great, it was the Medo-Persians, think modern day Iran. And before the Persians, it was the Babylonians. And prior to that, the northern part of this region was ruled by the Assyrians, and that you can think of modern day Iraq. And prior to that, it was the Jewish people living in the land. And we can go back even further. Prior to the Israelites gaining control, we're back basically now in the Iron Age. There were a bunch of competing tribes, the Israelites being one, the Hittites, Jebusites, Amalekites, Gibeonites, thisites, thatites, everyone's knight. So there is a pretty exhaustive history. I've gone back thousands of years. This region has seen a lot of war, a lot of conflict, but then there are lots of contentious pieces of real estate in the world. Let's just look at Kashmir. And I want to make one special note. If you think I made an error in regards to this very long history, please, by all means, point it out. I'm very confident in what I have presented, but it's possible I might have left out a minor detail here or there. But broadly speaking, we have a picture of this land being ruled for a large chunk of its history by foreign colonial powers until May 15th, 1948, that is. That's when the foreign colonial power that was ruling the land, Great Britain, they basically walked away. Now, when Britain was ruling this area from the closing days of World War I until that May 15th, 1948, everyone living in the region at that time during British rule was a Palestinian. They could have been a Jewish Palestinian, Muslim Arab Palestinian. There were also populations of Christians and Jews, but the main groups were the Jewish Palestinians and Arab Muslim Palestinians. Uh, and why was it called why were they called Palestinians? Because that was the name that had been affixed to the territory. Britain also had a mandate for Mesopotamia, but nobody talks about the Mesopotamian people for some reason. But then the people of Mesopotamia, Shia and Sunni, in a rare event, came together and they united to revolt against British rule. And what came out of that was Iraq. But the Palestinian people did not unite. Instead, a war broke out, and it was basically a land grab. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia all sent troops in, and there might have been there's reports of smallish of individuals coming from places like Iraq and attaching themselves to the armies from one of those five Arab League nations. Uh, but the five that I just mentioned, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Saudi, they were the major players. What were they seeking to do? They wanted to swallow up the former British mandate. And they did succeed in capturing some territory for their countries. Jordan, they captured the western bank of the Jordan River, and they also captured East Jerusalem. And the Egyptians grabbed the Gaza Strip. And the remainder was secured by Jewish residents who had previously been Palestinian. And now Jordan didn't create a new country out of its conquered territory. They just swallowed it up. Same with the Egyptians with Gaza. The Jewish Palestinians had to decide after the war, they had to pick a name for their new country. And there were differing proposals. Some called for the name of Zion, others wanted Judah or Judea, but ultimately, obviously, Israel won out. So was the nation of Israel created by defeating five invading armies during a war of independence, or was it the result of a catastrophic theft? I'm here to tell you, war is brutal, especially when you have the armies of five nations going up against around 800,000 Jewish inhabitants of the land. Now, want to deal with colonization. It's a frequent claim that the Jewish people are colonizers. Were these Jews all recent colonizers? Some were. There was a lot of immigration into British Palestine after World War II, and there was plenty before that as well. Basically, there were waves of Jewish immigration that started in the late 1800s when the territory was still part of the Ottoman district of Syria. But then again, there had always been a Jewish presence, a Jewish population in the region going all the way back to Roman times and before, obviously. There had been a continuous presence of Jews in the land, call it Palestine, call it Israel, call it whatever you want. Albeit at times the numbers were incredibly small, as in less than 10,000 people. If you go back into the 1800s, 1700s, there were Jews living in the land, but at times it got down to less than 10,000. This land, Israel, Palestine, is basically the nexus of three continents. It's basically the linchpin of Europe, Asia, and Africa. And it's been subject of wave after wave after wave of colonization from all over the world, both the ancient world and the modern world. Arabians moved in, Africans moved in, Europeans moved in. And the question I ask is how many generations do you have to go back, before you have some claim to the land where you can say it's my ancestral land? And what about people of mixed ancestral backgrounds? I mean, if Canada's First Nations peoples wanted someone like me to return to my country of origin, I'd have to be cut up into pieces with one part going to England, another to Scotland, another to Ireland, one more to Wales, four countries, four different languages. Irish Gaelic, Scottish Gaelic, Welsh, and English. And I've never had DNA testing done. I've thought about it, but I don't like the idea of giving my DNA over to some private company. But I am curious to know because I think you might find I have parts Scandinavian and French in me as well. Who knows? Uh, Now, personally, I view the existence of the modern nation state of Israel, to me, it is nothing short of a miracle. Until the famous Balfour Declaration, which many will know about, I don't think many Jews even thought that it was possible. And the fact that it's still around after 77 years, to me, that is another miracle because the surrounding nations have tried to wipe it out time and time again. The Six Day War, the Yom Kippur War, the current Iran backed conflict. I mean, I can go on and on about this because I love history, and this history is both recorded and foretold here in God's holy world, holy word. Yes, I am a professing Christian. The reestablishment of Israel was foretold in Ezekiel 36 and 37, as well as in Isaiah and other prophetic books. And what is coming, what hasn't happened yet, is foretold in Ezekiel 38 and 39. It's also echoed in the 83rd Psalm, and of course in the book of Revelation. But I understand, I get it. We live in a faithless world for the most part. This biblical wisdom has been replaced by empty headed virtue signaling as people seek the approval of the mindless horde. Everyone's got to be the virtuous one. Everyone wants to be on the right side of history. And in these postmodern times, victimhood is, is valued as sainthood, failing to recognize that both victims and victimizers are broken and fallen. There is none of us who are good or righteous. The words that the Apostle Paul wrote to the Roman church are as true today as they were two, nearly 2,000 years ago. You can read starting in Romans 3:10, where Paul wrote, "None is righteous, no, not one. No one understands. No one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good." That's not the way people see the world now, though. People want to take broken, fallen humanity, where we're all fallen, broken. We all, as I said earlier, uh, whether one does evil or not, all too often it's simply a matter of capacity. But that's all I had to say on the matter. And I will invite you, if you made it all the way here, 20 minutes in, hope you played me at double or 1.5 times speed to get through things quicker. But if you've made it to here and you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, I would ask you to at least consider it. Click that button. If you enjoy my content, then you'll be notified when I upload, and you'll be able to see what I have to say on other matters. I talk about current news and events. I talk a lot about my Christian faith. This world needs Christ more than ever. And this broken, fallen world is heading toward more brokenness and more fallenness. And it's going to be very difficult to discern. And the best thing we can do is to dive deeply into God's holy word and pray for that discernment, because when you're looking for good people, none of us is good. And that includes yours truly. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. And I like to end a lot of my videos with a blessing, because I know how difficult these times are. I know how challenging they are. I know how difficult it is to stick your neck out and to have an opinion. A lot of people just, well, I'm not going to say anything because I don't understand things well enough. There are two sides. I'm just going to stay out. Uh, at any rate, the blessing is this. It comes from the book of Numbers. These are not my words. These are words that that Aaron spoke over God's covenant chosen people. And the words are these: May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord grant you peace, because that is something we all need in this world. So thank you for watching, and I will see you when my next video gets uploaded, or when I go live. If you want to join for one of my live streams, my next one, it should be. I don't make promises, but I'm planning to do another one on Wednesday night. So this coming Wednesday. God bless, and I hope to see you again. Fill the comment field. I'm expecting to get some pushback, and that's okay. God bless.